The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
DJ Baller, you killed this.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to College Football Coast to Coast. It is now week one of the season. We're getting ready for games starting today. It is a game tonight, a big one that we'll be talking about later on in the show. But Tyler, we had a very uneventful, for the most part, week zero. So we'll jump right into week zero and get into our games that have concluded in the sleeper week. As usual, to open up, this one was the game in Dublin, Ireland between the Navy Midshipmen and the 13th ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This game started pretty one-sided, and it stayed one-sided all the way to the very end. Navy had plenty of opportunities to score the football, whether that be field goals, chances in the red zone that they just could not capitalize on throughout this game. Notre Dame took full advantage on the ground. Sam Hartman showed a little bit of what he could do for Notre Dame. Really didn't challenge anything too much down the field throughout this game. Kind of played meat and potatoes football, I think. So Notre Dame does come out with the win here, 42-3. Navy gets a late field goal to avoid the shutout, and they covered the over. So, folks, if you took the under, I'm very sorry that you lost by half a point. Don't do what I did and bet on the wrong line, and then you really screw yourself. This game was a home game for Notre Dame in Ireland, and it was pretty apparent throughout the game. It was, of course, a night game over there, 2:30 Eastern for us over here, so it's a little different. So it was a good game for the most part. I would like to see somebody a little bit more competitive than Navy show up for this game. It seemed kind of odd that our United States Navy football team would be traveling to Ireland to play against their, I don't know, that's kind of a weird selection there. So Tyler, what's your thoughts on this game? And we kind of know where Navy stands, but where do you see Notre Dame at right now?
Yeah, I think that after this game, there is a lot of expectations now, especially with Sam Hartman. It feels like we haven't seen this caliber of a quarterback in Notre Dame for quite some time. Sam Hartman is in his 6th year, so he has a lot of experience under his belt coming in from Wake Forest. I'll talk about Navy for a little bit. I mean, it's a first-year head coach. The triple options sometimes work, really work in game number one. They're through a goose egg. He didn't complete one pass, six pass attempts, but 0 completions. That's just not going to win a football game, especially against the Notre Dame defense. I think that's going to be the backbone of this team. But as you see at the bottom, can Sam Hartman lead Notre Dame to the playoff? I think that question will be answered in the coming weeks. They have games yet to play. They have 3 top 10 teams at the face. Ohio State first, then Clemson, and then you see if Notre Dame's legit. Like I said it, if they go 3-0, they are going to have the best resume in college football, and they're going to be the number 1 seed. Is that going to happen? If I had to say right now, probably not. But if you're a Notre Dame fan, if you go 2-1, go 11-1 on the season, then you're right there in the playoff discussion. So I think Notre Dame's season is going to come down to the 3 games. So they have Notre Dame, Navy this week. They have Tennessee State this coming up week. They should be able to do the same thing. So I think that Sam Hartman coming off of 4 touchdowns, he's already in the Heisman discussion race, depending on what Jordan Travis, Jaden Daniels, all the other quarterbacks do, Drake May, Spencer Rattler. List can go on and on. But I definitely think that is definitely off to a better start last year. Last year, we were looking at them coming off of a loss to Ohio State. Now we're feeling better about themselves coming off of a blowout win. I mean, Navy, they're going to be at the bottom of the American. They're probably not even going to get to a bowl. It's your head coach, and their offense isn't really up to par anymore. I mean, the triple option worked in the early 2000s, but now offenses are just modernizing. I just feel like Navy is just going to be left in the dust. So definitely a great win for Notre Dame. Definitely expect it.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving out of this game into our next one here, the only other game that we thought deserves any sort of conversation is this San Diego State. I'm looking right at it. San Diego State versus USC. So I think the thing to take away from this game was why did USC allow 28 points on the board for San Jose State? We talked about this last show. I said I was worried about the how the defense for USC would be able to hold up against San Jose State's offense, because they can score the football, no doubt. I mean, they were able to score pretty much at will in the second half. So I'm really worried about how USC handled that. 56 points is normally what we see out of them versus an opponent like this. 2 defenses that need a lot of work. And for USC to be number 6 in this and them give up 28 points is, I don't think, very good for their ranking. Not necessarily. I mean, they get the win, but at the same time, I think that their ranking will get hurt based off of the amount of points that you gave up to San Jose State. San Jose State's a good football team. I mean, you hold your own against a top 10 team for the most part, and you get halfway there. So I think that USC's 56-28 victory says a lot about the fact that USC's defense, I think, is in trouble. You have an offensive-minded head coach there. What do you have defensively that can stop the football? Which begs the question, Tyler, should we be worried about USC's defense?
Yeah, I think that, as long as Alex Grinch is there, I thought that, I agree with Chad. He said this on Sports Scramble that Alex Grinch shouldn't be the defensive coordinator at USC, but Lincoln Riley, every single year that, back at Oklahoma's defense wasn't that great. And now USC last year, the bad taste in our mouth, giving up over 40 points to a Tulane offense. And now, like I said last week, I wanted them, their goal was to hold this San Jose State team to under 20 points. Look what they did, 28. We know that their offense is national championship caliber, especially with Caleb Williams and the plays that he was making against San Jose State. Honestly, I was really impressed with San Jose State's quarterback in Cordero. He had a really good game. It's just that San Jose State couldn't stop USC. So it was pretty much, USC couldn't stop San Jose State's offense, but San Jose State's defense pretty much was the same. So it's pretty much USC, definitely a great win. San Jose State, like we mentioned, is going to be the middle of the pack of the Mountain West. It just feels like Boise State's and Fresno State's conference to lose at this point. But this is definitely a great win. USC's schedule will only get harder from here. I'm looking at that stretch in October. That's whenever we're going to find out if USC is a national championship contender or not. When they host Washington, and then they have to face off against a team like Oregon and Utah. So we're going to find out, in the next couple of months if this USC defense is definitely going to hold this team back or not. Right now, I mean, giving up 28 points to San Jose State's offense, if you're going to face better offenses, this is not going to be the best offense that USC is going to face. And, they have Michael. Honestly, the Pac-12 is filled with quarterbacks. We're seeing the SEC with many question marks. The Pac-12 of Michael Penix, So, Cam Rising, if he's back and healthy, and then you have Bo Nix. So USC's defense better figure it out, or this team is going to be out of the college football playoff race probably by October.
Yeah, I'm really worried about the state of what we see with USC. It's one of those things that it's hard to tell early on how a team's going to take control of their season. But this year against Santa, I mean, this is in their minds and in Lincoln Riley's minds, this is a cupcake. And if this cupcake scores 28 points on your home field, that's kind of a punch in the mouth, I think. And it's the tale of it's the tale of possession in this game at the most for the most part. I think that, that's the reason why you see the 56-28 line there is USC was able to control the football for most of the game. San Jose State's, scores were quick scores. I mean, it's kind of one of those things that USC returns a kickoff. I mean, there's there's a couple different things there that happen that you see this big, blown up final score. And of course, I think throughout the season, if you want to have any sort of money, you just go in and just bet every game that USC plays, just bet the over. I mean, at this stage, because 56 points, it didn't feel like 56 points at all. But it sure was a lot of points for these two teams to have a combined 84 points is crazy to me when the line was like 66.5. So moving out of this game, we're going to get into our lovely, fun first time for the season in week 1. It is games of the week, and we're going to the ACC first for our game of the week, which is the number 9 Clemson Tigers on the road headed to play the Duke Blue Devils. I am very interested in this game, Tyler. I know this is by far the game that you are paying attention to the most outside of the game in the SEC we'll be talking about. This game is going to be action-packed, and I am definitely worried about the state of Clemson's offense. Clemson's defense will do what they do, but I am worried about their offense. I'll let you take over from here. Give me your insight, what you think can be done here from Riley Leonard and the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, this is one of those games that are on the schedule. Everyone's going to be tuning in on Monday because that's going to be the only game. Everyone's going to be off on Labor Day. So tune into this one because we don't really get many in-conference matchups. We've seen in the Big Ten this year with Minnesota, Nebraska, Ohio State, Indiana. And then the ACC, we have 2 of them this year. We have Louisville and Georgia Tech, and then we have Clemson versus Duke. And I agree with you. Clemson, we know how good that their defense is. I think that they could be one of the best in not only the ACC along with Florida State, but in the country. I think that Michigan right now sits themselves at the top. But Clemson, they have experience on all 3 levels, experience in the defensive line, their secondary. So I think that, Cade Klubnik, this is who Clemson fans have been wanting for. They pretty much kicked DJU out of the curb, no longer have to deal with him anymore. But at the times that we've seen Cade Klubnik, it hasn't been that great, especially in that Capital One Orange Bowl against Tennessee. Only 14 points in that game against a Tennessee defense that was reeling at times at last season. So I think that Cade Klubnik definitely has to get off to a hot start. I mean, this is not a cupcake game that most of our college football teams are dealing with in week number 1. Duke is a team last year that we talked heavily about, with their head coach in year number 1 wasn't so great. Year number 2 wasn't so great either. But in year number 3, that's when they really took off. They almost got to 9 wins, but they got to 8 wins last year, went to a bowl game, ended up winning that. So I think that with Duke and Riley Leonard, I think that their offense can definitely compete with Clemson. The question mark I have for here is, can Riley Leonard do great against a Clemson defense? That's definitely going to be one of the best, like I said. So I think that this could definitely be a defensive battle. If I were a betting man or maybe had some heart in me, I would pick Duke to cover the 13 points, especially with Clemson going on the road for the first time. I think that their offense is going to be a little bit shaky, but it would not surprise me if they just hand off the ball to Will Shipley and be like, here you go. This is how we're going to win the football game. and get a little bit of pressure off of Cade Klubniak coming into one of his many first starts in this season. But if I had to pick, I'm going to go Clemson to win this one. I'll go 27-21. I think this is going to be closer than what the experts are thinking. I think that Duke is definitely going to be one of those dark horses team that no one wants to talk about. But once we get into the months that matter, I think that Duke is going to be right there in that discussion.
No, yeah, I totally think I agree with everything that you said about this game. Yeah, I really think that Duke has given a lot of thought into how their offense is going to be ran from this point forward, and we kind of saw that at the end of last season with their bowl game against UCF. I think that I think the biggest thing in this one, like you said, is it's Will Shipley. I think because uh, if he is going to carry Clemson, they really have to take advantage of Duke's defense. And Duke's defense is actually pretty good. It's an average defense, I think, in the country. But if they're able to shut down the run and make Clemson one-dimensional with Klubniak, I think that's where things can develop for Duke. And I think it gives them an opportunity on offense to move the ball down the field. That Duke's was one of the best teams in the country at home last year. So I think that definitely they have a lot of advantage playing at home in this one. So looking forward to that one. I think that I'll agree with you for the most part as far as score goes. I'm going to go 28-21. I think it's a touchdown scoring game in this one for the most part. So yeah, we'll see what happens in this one. It'll be a great Monday night game for a Labor Day weekend. Moving on to our next game, we are headed over to the lovely Big Ten. It is the West Virginia Mountaineers headed to Happy Valley to play the number 7 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions, who open as a 20.5-point favorite for this weekend's night game there on NBC. I am looking forward to this one. Probably the biggest game, in my opinion, for me to watch this weekend. So I will be watching that game on the couch on Saturday night. So it'll be a good one. I'm kind of at a loss to figure out where West Virginia is at. It's a little different from what we saw last season, them opening with Pitt. I think it's completely different football team. So I would be surprised to see this game anywhere close. I expect Penn State to cover the 20.5. I think for this one, the biggest thing is Penn State's offense, new quarterback. You still have 2 of your running backs coming back, arguably the best duo of running backs in the country in the backfield. A lot of big changes in the slot. You've got some new guys, some younger guys coming in. And, Penn State has recruited well this offseason and have some freshmen who have stepped up and hopefully will take the reins there on offense. So I expect this game to be extremely one-sided. I'll say 38-14 in this one, just because I think it's going to be a runaway on offense, and defensively, I'll give West Virginia 2 touchdowns at most.
Yeah, I don't really see this game being close at all. There wasn't really much to pick from in the Big Ten. We could have gone Minnesota and Nebraska, but I just felt like all eyes have to be on Penn State on Saturday night under lights. And like you mentioned, West Virginia comes into a hostile environment, and this is one of the most crazy environments. This is just, I feel for them. This is game number 1 to go into Happy Valley in front of over 100,000 fans that are ready to see their team finally compete for a Big Ten championship. And I think that, Penn State, we're going to get their first look with Drew Aller. No more Sean Clifford. This is what all their fans have been shouting to the heaven tops, that they want this guy to be there. They think that they can, Drew Aller can take them to the next level. And we'll see. Are we going to really realize that this is a national championship team game number 1 against West Virginia? No, because West Virginia is now, without JT Daniels, how is their offense going to look this season? we know how their defense looked last season. It was one of the worst in the Big 12. I think that's not going to really do well for for going up against Penn State. For their 1-2 punch and their running back, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, we know what they can do. I think that Drew Aller is going to have a really good game. I think it wouldn't shock me if he throws for 3 touchdowns and almost close to 300 yards. I think that's definitely doable against West Virginia. I just feel like Penn State's just got all the talent on both sides of the ball and the advantage. Penn State's defense is not really talked about. All the talk has been around Michigan's defense. I think that Penn State defense, even losing one of their top cornerbacks and Joey Porter Jr., I think that James Franklin has tapped into the transfer portal and the recruiting trail, and that defense is ready and reloaded. So I think that Penn State gets off to a hot start. I'm going to go on the same score with you. I think that this is a 38-14 game. I think that Penn State's offense gets off to a hot start, and West Virginia doesn't really have many answers. So I don't think that West Virginia is ready to compete in this environment quite yet. It feels like they're a year or two away from being back into the Big 12 race. So I think that Penn State gets off to a really hot start to start this season. A lot of talk is going to be around them after this game.
Absolutely. 138 miles separate these two teams. So it is good to see a close little, I don't want to say rivalry, but two close opponents face off against each other for this one under the lights on Saturday night. Moving out of the Big 10, we'll go to the Big 12, and it is a game that nobody is going to expect us to pick, but it is UTSA who opens as the safety, the 2-point favorite on the road at Houston, the newest members of the Big 12. So I am going to be interested to see how these teams have changed, if they've changed at all. UTSA is a high-powered offense team. In Houston prides themselves on defense. So this game here could be one way or the other. It could be extremely over on the over-under. It could be over, or it could be under, depending on how Houston's defense is able to stop UTSA's offense. This game, in my opinion, I think is for Houston. They have to set the tone in this game and basically show that they're worthy enough to be a part of the Big 12. So I think this is where, UTSA comes in as the favorite on the road, which was surprising me. I figured this line would be pretty much even. For them to be a 2-point favorite, they really are trusting in UTSA to be able to come up with a win. I mean, I think that I'm iffy about Houston. Houston has shown signs in the past that they're a decent football team and they can be a top 25 team. But I just don't think we live in that same world of that being a thing. I think that I think that UTSA is going to win this football game by a touchdown. I don't see Houston being too prepared for this. So I'm going to take UTSA to win this one. I'm going to go 30-24. I have no idea how this game's going to go, and I don't think anybody does. It's just kind of a weird one.
Yeah, it just feels weird to say that Houston's now in the Big 12 and that their first Big 12 game of the week that we're talking about is against UTSA. I think that UTSA is a team that I'm high on one of my top group of 5 teams, along with Tulane and South Alabama, which we'll get to their matchup later in the show here. But I think I have more question marks on Houston. No more Clayton Tune, their experienced quarterback. Tank Dell is down in the NFL draft. So who is going to generate some power in this offense? Dana Holgerson now finds himself in the Big 12. He was in the West Virginia coach, but they were in the Big East. But now he gets to face off against him. So I think that Houston needs this game in this win, because it won't get any easier in the Big 12. It just feels like the final year of Texas and Oklahoma. It just feels like their year. They have to face off against Texas Tech. So they got to get their wins when they can. But I just don't think that they're going to get it against a UTSA team that's very experienced on both sides of the ball. Frank Harris comes back for another season. I think that UTSA's offense, I just trust them more. There's no more question marks against Houston. I know that Houston is the home team. I thought that Houston was going to be the favorite, but Vegas saying that, Texas San Antonio is a 2-point favorite has to say something. And so I think that this is going to be an offensive a shootout here. It always is. UTSA offense will bring their to the table. I just don't know if Houston can match up, for below in this one. So I think that UTSA gets a late turnover to decide this one. So I think that UTSA wins this one 38-31 and what will be an absolute slugfest. But I'm going to go with the Roadrunners, in the Conference USA. If they can get this one, this could be a team that we're looking at down the stretch. If they can, upset Tennessee on the road, if they can. So we'll see. I just feel like UTSA, their ceiling is 11-1, but realistically they're 10-2. If they can get this win, their Conference USA schedule really sets up, and then we could be talking about the same team being in New Year's 6.
Absolutely, yeah. UTSA has a track record for being a New Year's Six bowl team, kind of sneaking in. So I think that UTSA is a really good football team, and I think they're underrated. But Vegas has kind of figured out that UTSA can win these games early on in the season. Yeah, if they are a 10-2 team this year, they're going to be a New Year's Six team in there, kind of like the Tulane of this year could be. So they definitely have a ton of upside on both sides of the football. But we will stay tuned for that one on Saturday. So moving on from the Big 12 to the Pac 12, not 12 left anymore. So here we go. It's an SEC and Pac 12 game here. That is tonight, folks, live from Salt Lake City. So I think that Florida coming in unranked in the Salt Lake against the 14th ranked Utah Utes. Let me tell you what, 14, don't be fooled, anybody, that they are ranked 14 in the country, because at the end of this game, you will go, how are they ranked 14th in the country? Well, all things considered, you have to look at the big picture with this game. Last year, playing in Gainesville, Utah, ends up coming in and kind of having a so-so game. So I think Florida's trying to figure out what they can do to take advantage of Utah's defense and offense. Obviously, in this one, the two biggest stories in this game is that Utah will be without Cam Rising and their starting tight end as well in this game. So they are missing two critical pieces on offense in order to score the football. They have a 4.5 point line right now. And I expect that to maybe drop to 3.5 before kickoff. But yeah, I think if Florida can figure something out with Graham Mertz, and they have gone back to the drawing board and reworked what Florida can really do on offense, I think that they can win this football game. Is it a close game throughout? Probably so. I wouldn't expect Florida to stretch it out on the road. At most, they win by 7. So I think this game's going to be extremely low scoring. So I'm going to go 21-14 in this one. I just don't think Utah's going to be able to score the football. So I'll give Florida the win.
Yeah, I think that this game, with the news that they're starting tight end and also Cam Rising is out, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this line gets down to like 3.5 and 4 by the time tonight kicks off. But I'm definitely excited. This game, officially tells us that college football is back. We saw last year's game coming down to the wire. We were so high on Utah in that game, and then Anthony Richardson had his best game of his life, and the Gators ended up coming in this one. Like I said on Sports Scramble, it just feels like this is a big time year for Billy Napier. He failed in year number 1, only got to 6 wins. If he does it again, Gainesville, they don't wait. They're going to kick you to the curb and look for another head coach. So I think that Florida, I feel like this is a more important win to get, especially against the Utah team that was out their starting quarterback. Most of their offensive production is gone in this one. These are two teams that we're going to rely heavily on their running game. We'll see how Graham Mertz does at Wisconsin. I just feel like a quarterback can never do well at Wisconsin unless your name is Russell Wilson. That's the only time you could probably do well. They're just a team that likes to run the football. You have Etienne coming back for another season. You have a lot of experienced wide receivers. I just have, a bad taste in my mouth of watching Florida's defense last year. And we have to talk about last year because we haven't seen this year's version of them. Florida was probably not one of the worst teams and defenses in the SEC, but it's just not what we're used to of this Florida defense. So I expect them to be better this year, especially against Utah. Like you said, I just don't really see a lot of offense in this one. It just feels like this is going to be a defensive battle, grind you out. It's going to be a time possession with the new rules. Whenever you get a first down, the clock continues to churn. So this is probably going to be a slow paced game. Both of these teams are just want to get out of there and get out with a win. But just since that it's at Utah, we saw Florida get the home win. I cannot talk this morning against Utah. I feel like this is just not the right time for Florida to sweep this series. I just do not see that. Even with Utah without their starting quarterback in Cam Rising, I think that they squeak out a victory. Probably not going to be one of the prettiest games, but I have Utah winning this one by a field goal, 17-14. I don't think it's going to be that pretty, especially with two quarterbacks that has some question marks going into the season. So I'm just going to go with Utah just because they're the home team in that environment.
Yeah, it's hard to not take Utah with their record at home, not losing a game there in what feels like forever. So, yeah, this game of the Pac-12 will be a really good one. I will be watching this game tonight, hopefully with some popcorn and just chilling out and watching this really good football game. So we will see what happens in that one, moving away from the Pac-12 to the big bad SEC to round out our Power 5. The LSU Tigers, they are going to Orlando. They're going to play the neutral site with Florida State. So the 5th-ranked Tigers come in as the 2.5-point favorite in this neutral site battle against the 8th-ranked Florida State Seminoles. Man, let me tell you what, this game right here will set the stage for both teams and where they stand if they want to make the playoff. This game, I know it's week 1, but this game is huge when it comes to both of these teams with the ACC and the SEC. Not only for this, but also for conference championships. I think that this game, even though it's a non-conference game, it really could affect the conference at the end of it all. So I am kind of iffy. I just think that LSU's a little bit overvalued in this game at a 2.5-point favorite in Florida. I honestly thought it would go 2.5 the other direction, to be honest with you. It just seems like this game, or even, I mean, this game could go even because we really don't know where both of these teams are at right now. They brought back most of their lineup on both sides of the ball. So Florida State's defense, to me, I think will be the question mark for them, as well as LSU's secondary. LSU will be able to score the football, I think. And it's just a matter of, is Florida State going to be able to match them? We saw a shootout last year, and I think that this is kind of a year where Florida State is going to have to show that they can step up on defense against LSU. LSU, I will be interested to see how they handle the run game. That's my biggest thing for them. If LSU is able to run the ball well, I think that they could win this football game. Just controlling it and controlling the football is kind of their game. And if they can do that and push the ball down the field, I think that they can cover a 2.5-point line. With Florida State, if Jordan Travis can take advantage of deep passes down the field, I think that they can control this game and cover, that as well, in their direction. So it's kind of a coin toss for me. I'll go with the Tigers in this one. If they win, it's by 1 or it's by 3. So it's going to be extremely close, I think. As far as scoring goes, I don't think it's going to be crazy high scoring. I'm going to go with a 30-27 line, and I'll give the Tigers the win.
Yeah, I just don't see any of these teams blowing each other out. This is going to be a very close game coming down to the wire. It's going to be what happened last year coming down to a missed extra point. Now, are we going to get that? Who knows? This game always is crazy when you have two teams who are getting a lot of preseason hype. Both are expected to be in the college football playoff race. Florida State coming off of a 10-win season. Same with LSU and Brian Kelly's first year in Baton Rouge. But I think that both teams look dramatically different. You know, LSU last year going into that game, it was Jane Daniels' first year in the offensive scheme. It was young offensive line. Harold Perkins wasn't really much involved in this game. And then Florida State one, you know, you had Jordan Travis, all those offensive weapons with Johnny Wilson. We saw Benson, the running back. Florida State is a team that I'm very high on in the ACC. I think that they're going to be one of the best defenses. I think that their question mark is going to be at their linebackers. Their secondary is outstanding. Their defensive line has dudes that should be in the NFL, but they decide to come back and win a national championship. So you can definitely respect that. Jordan Travis is going to be right there in the Heisman discussion. He really took a leap last year. I expect him to just continue that momentum under Mike Norvell's scheme, and I think that their receivers, they got the South Carolina tight end transfer, so this team really got better in the offseason. I just don't see many losses on their schedule, so I agree with you. I think that the winner of this game is set up to get to the college football playoff. The loser is going to have to dig themselves up. They pretty much only get one more loss. If you get one more loss, you're gone. I mean, we haven't seen a two-loss team. I don't think we're going to see it now. Next year, you can have two losses, whenever they go to the 12-team playoff. But going on the LSU side, I agree with you. I think that the main question mark surrounding this team is their secondary. They lost a lot of guys in that secondary. They had pretty much their starters that you're going to see on Sunday night is going to be an FCS guy from Southeast Louisiana. And then you're going to have Deuce Chestnut, the Syracuse transfer. So it's pretty much like last year where Brian Kelly had to retool this secondary, and they're going to have to retool it again. Now, what their strength is going to be is their offense. I think that LSU can not only be one of the best offenses in the SEC, but in the country. Jane Daniels coming back for his senior season. I think that the big headlines that we already know is Mason Smith is suspended for this game, and also John Emery is not going to be in there. So that backfield is going to be a little bit thin, in the starters. They have a lot of freshmen, but it's going to be Noah Kane. It's going to be your RB1, and then you'll have Logan Diggs, the Notre Dame transfer. So I know that there's a lot of offensive talent, but I just feel like this is going to be a defensive battle once again. I think that this game, a top 10 matchup always comes down to the trenches. I think that LSU's offensive line, maybe potentially has the advantage, but they're going up against one of the best defensive lines. So I think that's definitely going to be a matchup to watch. Special teams could have come down to special teams this year. Sure. But I'm going to go with LSU in this one. Like you mentioned last week, these are two evenly matched teams. Flip a coin. I mean, I've been going back and forth on this one. I think it's going to be one of the best games of the weekend. I think that everyone is going to be, all eyes are going to be on Orlando in this one. But I'm going to go with LSU 27-24. Once again, I think it's going to come down to a field goal game, maybe even less, maybe a 1-point game. Who knows? All I know is this is going to be the game of the year in week number 1.
Dude, don't lie. You ain't been doing no coin flip. Look at behind you there. I said he's got all that stuff behind. He ain't been doing no coin flip, people. He wants his LSU Tigers to win, which I can't disrespect him. So, I understand that completely, and yeah, it'll be a great one. I'll be ready for it. So it's gonna be a fun one. But now moving outside of what we call the fun zone into the fun zone. Of course, it's the Sunbelt Fun Belt up against the lovely team that somehow is ranked in the top 25. I don't know. It's kind of weird. No, South Alabama, the Jaguars are on the road. They're going to New Orleans to play the 24 ranked Tulane Green Wave. So I have mixed feelings about this game. It doesn't show it, but this game really could be a 25-24 matchup, number 25, number 24 matchup. South Alabama was receiving votes to be the 25th ranked team, uh, in the top 25, and they did not get it. Maybe after this week they could get it. I think that it's a possibility that the Jaguars could win a game on the road at Tulane. I don't know how Tulane's going to be. Tulane's a 7-point favorite at home, which is understandable. Um, Look, it's a tough one. This has got to be. I think this is the toughest one that we'll talk about. To be honest with you, um, South Alabama is a team that is revitalized completely. I mean, this is not a South Alabama team that anybody has really seen before. Um, I expect them to come out heavy on offense. I think that they have the ability to score the football against Tulane. Are they going to be able to stop Tulane? It's the biggest question for me. Offensively, is Tulane polished enough to move the ball down the field at home and just take full advantage of South Alabama? I think South Alabama, where they are good is in their secondary. Where they struggle is I think up on the defensive line. So I think this could be a battle of secondary and quarterback, and it could get very close or it could get very ugly depending on what happens here. Uh, I think that it's probably a close game. I think it's probably a field goal game. I'll give Tulane the win at home just because I don't think South Alabama is going to be able to win a game on the road in New Orleans. I just think it's going to be too tough for them to do that. If you do remember the last time they were in New Orleans, it was for a bowl game and they got destroyed by Western Kentucky. So I think this game will be close. I have Tulane winning 24-21 to stay there in the top 25.
I think that this could definitely be right up there with North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida State, LSU for being one of the best games of the weekend. I don't think that anybody is really talking about this game, but I think that this is definitely going to be one of those group of five games. I think that, we talk about the college football playoff of LSU, Florida State. I think whoever wins this game is pretty set up to be in that New Year's Six discussion. Tulane has to face Ole Miss in a couple of weeks. South Alabama has to go on the road to face Oklahoma State. So I think that both teams are definitely going to be tested. This is going to definitely decide, who's going to be that group of five representative once we get into, the early January and late December, once we get to the bowl selection. So I think that this is going to be a sensational quarterback battle. You got Carter Bradley coming back for South Alabama, Michael Pratt. Tulane's offense, I think, is going to be explosive. South Alabama is going to be the same way. Tulane lost Tyjae Spears. That was one of my favorite running backs to watch at the group of five level. He's gone. So where does really good Western Kentucky team? So it would not shock me if this game comes down to the wire. I picked the over, so I'm going to stick with the over. I think that this is going to be an offensive slugfest. I want to pick South Alabama, but I just can't do it, especially on the road against Tulane. Tulane coming off of a really good season, knocking off Caleb Williams and USC in the Cotton Bowl. I think that they continue that momentum. I think that this is going to be an insane game, but I'm going to go. I think that South Alabama covers, but I think that in the end, Tulane wins. If this was in Mobile, I think it would definitely be a different story. But since the Green Wave faithful is going to be behind their team, I think that Tulane gets the win. I'll say 38-35. So my over pick hits.
Yeah, definitely a close one there. Tulane's a very good team at home, so is South Alabama at home. So I'll be very interested to see how this game turns out in the group of five. And folks, it's early. We get it. Well, technically it's early. Yeah, it's early in the morning and it's early in the season. So I know, just be patient with us. It is our college football playoff picks. It's not even week one and here we go. It's college football playoff time. I I haven't even begun to think about this. I know Tyler's probably thought about it, but I haven't thought about it at all. So I will be interested to see what happens. As you know, folks, I am one for only having one team per conference in the college football playoff, in the 4-team college football playoff. So that means one conference is going to get left out. And I kind of got a guess of who that conference is going to be. But nonetheless, Tyler, let's hear your playoff pick, starting with number 4 and working our way up to number 1.
Well, before I get to number 4, I'll just go ahead and say that the conferences that are not going to be involved is the Big 12. I do think, like I mentioned on last week's show, I think that Texas will beat Oklahoma, but I think that Texas is either going to be 10-2 or 9-3, and that's just not good enough. So I think that the Big 12 in their final year, before it gets absolutely insane, you have teams moving out, teams moving in. I think that another conference that's going to be left out, which might surprise many, is going to be the ACC. I have Florida State winning that conference, but I think they're going to be 10-2 in Clemson. I could see them being 10-2 as well. So if you could do process of elimination, that leaves 3 Power 5 conferences to be in the mix. Yes, I do have a Pac-12 team being in this discussion. And I'm going to go with a number 4 team, and it's going to be the Michigan Wolverines. I think that this is a team that will finish 11-1. They'll have one loss, and their one loss is going to be on the road to Penn State. I do think that Ohio State is going to be a 10-2 team. I think that they potentially could lose to Notre Dame. I think that that's definitely a high possibility. And then I think that they lose to Michigan. Michigan is just like the past couple of years. They just have all the tools to beat Ohio State. If you've seen in the last year's game and the year before, what has Michigan done? They are just run it up their throats, and Ohio State can't do anything about it. So with Blake Corum coming back, with Donovan Edwards coming back, I do think that they slip up against Penn State on the road. I wish that they would have put that as the wideout, but of course, they have to put it against Iowa. Like, who puts it against Iowa? Please move that game to be against Michigan. But I think even without the wideout, I think that's going to be a really great game coming down to the wire. But I think even with Michigan, I think it's going to be a close loss. So I think that their resume is still going to be good enough to get backdoor their way into the playoffs. So I think that Michigan is going to be one of 2 Big Ten teams to get into the playoff. Number 3.
All right. Hold on. All right, change of plans. I'm sorry. Change of plans. I thought about it while you were talking, and I thought about it. I'll give you my number 14.
Sure.
And then we'll just work back and forth here till we get to number 1. For me, number 4, I know that I've trashed them in the recent episode of the Sports Scramble podcast a little bit, but my number 4 team, if they can win all their games except for possibly one, and it's going to be Notre Dame. I'm going to put Notre Dame at number 4 as an independent. I think this is their last chance as an independent. They have to join a conference if they want any part of this stuff in the future. It's just that this year their schedule is really, really tough. I mean, it's a really good schedule on paper. And if they can escape with one loss and be an 11-1 team, I think that they can sneak in. And the College Football Playoff Committee has shown them love when they have lost one game or 2 games. So I expect them to be like a 10-2 team if they survive some of these games, and if they, turn out the team that we saw from week 0, they could slip in. So I'll put the Fighting Irish at number 4.
I mean, I could definitely see that if they run the table against those top 10 teams. Like I mentioned, 2-1. The rest of the schedule really sets up. Name me another opponent that can beat Notre Dame on that schedule outside of those top 10 teams. So, they do get Ohio State at home this year. They have to travel to Clemson, and I think that USC goes to them. Look at USC's defense. Are they going to be able to stop Sam Hartman? Who knows? So I definitely can see that. I know that you trashed on them, but I think that Notre Dame is going to be one of those teams that we're going to be talking about every single week, and they're going to be right up there in the discussion, especially with their level of defense and also Sam Hartman, the level of play that he brings every week. So now we go on to number 3. This is where I have a Pac-12 team. No, it's not going to be USC. It's going to be a team that I'm very very, very high on this season, and it is none other than the Washington Huskies. It gets started right for them in week number 1 against Boise State. I think, Boise State's definitely one of those teams that could definitely be a sneaky team, but I think that Washington takes care of business. Look at the rest of their schedule. The bottom of the Pac-12, there's not really any teams that are going to compete with them. I think that their October schedule is really going to be like, is this team legit or not? They do have to go on the road to USC. Right now, I trust Washington's defense right now. I know we haven't seen Washington take the field, but you're definitely going to see it on Saturday night when they face off against Boise. They have Utah at home. That's definitely good news. And they have Oregon at home. So they get most of their meat of the schedule is at home in a very hostile environment, a very tough place to play out there in Seattle. So I think that Michael Penix Jr. is ready to, be up there with Cale Williams. I think that a lot of talk has been around him. But I think that Michael Penix Jr. coming from Indiana, he had a really good season, threw for over 4,000 passing yards. I think he can do that again. I think he's going to be right up there in the Heisman discussion. I'll even say he'll have a seat by the time that the Heisman Trophy award is presented out to him. So I'm going to have Washington. I think that this is either honestly a 12-0 or an 11-1 team. I think that they take care of business in the Pac-12 and represent and what it's going to be the final year of the Pac-12. I think that the Pac-12 gets a team with Washington being that 3 seed.
Yeah, no, I like that pick. I like Washington. For my number 3, the only reason I can't put Washington there is because I think that the committee will value Notre Dame's schedule more than Washington's schedule. And if they both come in with 1 loss, it'll be Notre Dame that gets the nod before Washington would. And I just think that that's how politics work in this situation. And looking at it like that, I just think that's kind of where it stands. As far as it goes, it's hard to see another team outside of the top 10 as of right now that would even have a shot making it into the college football playoff. So you really have to keep it confined into the top 10 teams when you're talking about 3 and above, because it's going to be difficult to see any team outside of this get anywhere close to being a top 3 team in the country. For number 3, this is a really tough one. I'm at a loss to figure out how this whole thing works out, because you got a lot of teams here, and somebody's gonna lose somewhere. At number 3, I'm gonna go with the Georgia Bulldogs. I expect Georgia to be a part of it again. It's just a matter of, can Georgia be the number 1 team in the country? I just don't think their schedule is good enough for them to be number 1 in the country. Could they go undefeated this season? Absolutely, they probably could. But at the same time, is their schedule good enough in order for them to be the number 1 team in the country? I just don't think so. Could they lose 1 game? Absolutely a possibility. And they've been on the ropes a couple of times in previous seasons. And, there is no more Stetson Bennett. So, it's going to be interesting to see how their offense works. Their defense will always be good. It'll be interesting to see how their offense works this season. Once we get later into the season in SEC play, I think that's probably the time that we'll be paying attention to Georgia if we do this season. So I'm going to put the Bulldogs at the 3rd spot.
No, I think that's a pretty safe pick. I mean, in the preseason, I feel like every playoff that I've seen has Georgia in. So, I mean, the 2-time reigning national champs, if you don't have them in the playoff, then I just don't think you've watched a college football. I know that they have some question marks, but if you look at their schedule, it's pretty much a walk in the park. Would not surprise me if they run the table. Number 2, this is where I have my second Big Ten team. So I'm going to say that what Jacob doesn't want is, have 2 teams from a conference. But I definitely think you respect this pick. It's not going to be Ohio State. It's going to be Penn State. I think that this is the year that they finally break through. I'm tired of saying, James Franklin, I know that he can't win the big game, but I just feel like Drew Aller is just going to be the knight in shining armor that gets them there. I think that Sean Clifford, he, was a talented quarterback, but I think that Drew Aller is going to take it to the next level. I think that their offense could definitely be one of the best in the Big Ten. Honestly, if Drew Aller has an off game, they could just hand it off to their 1-2 punch in the running back and still beat you every week. I think that their defense is going to be right up there. So I honestly either have them going undefeated or 11-1. I just don't think that there's going to be many undefeated teams in the college football season. It just feels like there's just so many teams that can be in this discussion. So for safe pick, I think that Penn State will be 11-1. One loss will probably, I don't even know where their one loss is going to be. I'm just going to say that they're going to finish 11-1. They'll be the Big Ten champs, beat Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. So I'm going to have the Nittany Lions representing, be the second representative in the Big Ten and be the number 2 seed.
Yeah, I kind of I like that. No, I really do. I think for my number 2, I'm gonna go with the same thing. I think that Penn State could be the number 2 team in the country, and I'll reiterate what you said. Yeah, their 1-2 punch in the backfield feels like an unstoppable duo. And as far as Drew Aller goes, his arm, I haven't seen anybody throw the football remotely close to how Drew Aller throws a football, other than maybe Jordan Travis. I think that them two, they're on a totally different level when it comes to quarterback play. They're both really big quarterbacks. I mean, both of them are close to 6'6", so it's definitely the tale of being able to throw the football this year. And I think that they ultimately do have a guy that they can lean on the offense for a while, for some time to come, and has some experience in big games, playing late in the games, in producing well. I mean, he's played some big games with Clifford battling injuries in the past, so him no longer being there, the stage is set for a Penn State team to come back and be in contention for a national championship for the first time in what feels like forever. So that is my number 2 team. I agree. I think they can win the big games this year and lean on Drew Aller and the running game. They have all the experience that they need on both sides of the football in order to get it done. And for them to be preseason ranked number 7, it just shows that they do have some sort of pull when it comes to the top 25 and the top 10 when the committee sits down here later in the season and makes their decisions.
Yeah, and then my number 1 seed, I think it's pretty clear. It's just going to be the ACC champion. I think that there's probably 4 teams that will be in the mix. It'll be, I think that Tennessee is going to be right up there. Would not surprise me if they be a 10-2 team. LSU and Alabama will be competing in the SEC West. The winner of that game in Tuscaloosa will probably end up winning the SEC West. But I'm just going to go all chalk here, just be a safe pick. I'm going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs being the number 1 seed. I think they run the table and beat whoever wins that game between Alabama and LSU. I'm leaning towards LSU, but I think that Georgia, even with the question marks on offense, I mean, their defense, they lose a lot of guys, and the next year they're still good. So until I see them really have a drop-off, like I mentioned, their schedule really sets up nicely for them. They get 2 of their biggest home games, their contests at home. South Carolina comes actually they get Tennessee on the road. But I just think that was probably like the only game that I see even being remotely challenging for Georgia. So I think that this is a team that runs the table. This might be like the lone undefeated team in all of college football. This is how easy their schedule is. So I'm just going to go for safe pick. I'll go Georgia being my 1 seed.
Nah, boo.
I know.
Good God. Folks, I'm going to go a little off the wall here. I'm going to hop over to a conference that Tyler said wouldn't be a part of it, to pick the number 1 team in the country. I'm going to go with the Florida State Seminoles. Just throwing it out there. I think that it's possible for them to go undefeated this year. If they are to beat LSU in week 1, it sets them up with their only other clash of the season being against Clemson. And if they're able to beat both of those teams, they have a very good resume to run the table and go undefeated throughout the season. I mean, they offensively, I think they're one of the best polished offensive teams in the country. Will they have another season like they did last year with some really big opportunities? And I mean, I think we saw the future of Florida State last year. So I think that they could be the number 1 team in the country at the end of it all. It brings back days of Jameis Winston a little bit. And I think that it really could be a very historic season for Florida State and Mike Norvell. So I think that they have a big opportunity to be the number one team in the country, and there's a lot of pressure on that to happen. And it very well could be. So I took a shot in the dark and ran with Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see that. If they beat LSU, I think that the schedule really sets up nicely for them. I know that they face off against Clemson, but now with the divisions, could we see a rematch? It's sure looking like it because I mean, Clemson, what's their losses going to be potentially to Notre Dame, but they get that game at home. They get Florida State at home. So I just think that the ACC is just going to beat each other up. North Carolina wouldn't surprise me if they shock one of those teams too. So I think that there's a lot of teams that are going to be in discussion. I really like that Notre Dame pick, especially if they, go 2-1 against those three teams. So I definitely think it's going to be a fun season. It's our early picks, so we'll wait until the mid-season and we'll see if our four in the preseason will be the same in the mid-season.
Absolutely, and we'll post our top four as well on our Twitter page and everything. So we'll post all that up. So you guys can see our top fours for each of us and follow it throughout the season and vote who you think's top four is more likely to happen. That would be great if you guys could go and vote and see who really has a better top four at the start of the season. And if any of our top four people are in the top four for the college football playoff at the end of the season, you never know. It could be a wild season this year. So we will strap in and see what happens. We had a team like TCU last year make it to the national. Look, we could have anything happen this year, and just buckle up and get ready, folks, because week 1 is approaching, and it is tonight to start off that game with Florida and Utah. Tyler, give them your top 4 real quick before we head out.
Yeah, to wrap it up, I have Georgia being the 1 seed, Penn State 2, and then I had Washington 3 and Michigan at 4. So 2 Big Ten teams, and then you have an SEC and a Pac-12 representative.
Absolutely. And for me, I have Florida State at number 1, Penn State at number 2. Number 3, I have the Georgia Bulldogs, and 4, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Those are our top 4 guys, and week 1 is here. So you guys buckle up, get ready, sit on the couch, watch a game, go out to the bar, watch a game, do whatever you can to go out there and support your team and all the teams that are playing those big games in week 1. We like to see those, and we will see you guys again next week. We will recap week 1 and get ready for week 2 and straight into the meat and potatoes of the season.